All right, hitting record. All right,
Right. A colorful setting here.
beautiful setting. So, Juliet, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're involved with synchronicity or coincidence currently, different projects, and also how you got started on this path.
Yeah, thank you. So, my pleasure to be speaking with you. It's such a brilliant, important topic. And presently, I am the managing director of a new global nonprofit called the Coincidence Project. And we are gearing up for a November 19th, 2022 public launch party. We have been working in the background for many of the people involved for decades, actually. We've been working as a collective for about 2 years. And all through the pandemic, we came together. The founder, co founder, and I is Bernard Beitman, or Bernie Beitman for short. And he's had a huge, influence on my understanding of coincidence and serendipity and synchronicity for sure. And we had been talking about these phenomena for about 5 years. We'd had a running conversation since we first became friends and first met in about 2016. And I left full-time academic life. I'd been in academia for about 19 years all totaled. And January of 2020, I felt the world calling. And the world was bigger than one institution. The world was bigger than the ivory tower. Even with a lot of work in diversity and inclusion, I felt like there's too many people left behind by higher ed. And I really felt like my work was global. And I wanted to answer the call, and a pandemic hit. And so the ideas I had about liberating myself from, kind of the structural, full-time, institution-based career happened to coincide with a pandemic within 3 months there. And so Bernie was there and said, I'm ready to really figure out what the coincidence project could be. And he always had that name in his mind. And so he brought me on board, and I told him my mantra is just co with it. Trademark me. So we were just coing with it, and I just co with everything I do. I am a collective systems interrelational being. I thrive by being in dialogue and in connection with other beings, including humans, but not limited to humans. And so Bernie and I decided to just go with it. And we brought on board a lot of specialists that have written about, researched, studied, podcasted about, documentary filmed about the topics of coincidence, serendipity, and synchronicity. So for the past 2.5 years so far, we've been working on formalizing that kind of global collective. And now we're going to try to do even more widespread public outreach and allow more people to share their stories about their own experiences. In some traditions, this is talked about quite openly, numinous, mysterious, fantastic, wonder, and awe-inspiring experiences may be accessible and talked about for people, particularly in some religious traditions, certainly in all indigenous traditions all over the world. This is the substance of life. It is infuses everything people do. They would share things that have come to them from dreams or insights that feel handed down from the ancestors, or amazing experiences, the coming together with nature, with other animals, plants, weather events, the winds, the rocks, the trees, and certainly with other people. This is normal in many cultures, but not in ours. And so we are working to help normalize it to the kind of developed world, developed technological, materialistic, modern worldview has lost something. It's lost sight of all of this. So our mission is to illuminate the hidden currents that connect and unite us. And these currents, they flow through all of reality. I see reality as a web, as a massive, multi-dimensional spider web that's strung in every possible stacked layer upon layer dimension. And all of these, the webs, the strands of the webs, they can weave us together. And I feel that might be why we sometimes know when a loved one is in distress at a distance, which is a phenomenon Bernie has named as simulpathity, simultaneously having the pathos or feeling of another. Some people seem to feel that even of folks they don't know yet, and they may be called to go somewhere and they don't know why, but when they arrive, they find someone in distress. There are a lot of stories of people being saved when they're considering ending their life, or when they're in an accident of some kind. Someone happens to be called to be there. And many of those stories are about a loved one, a family member or friend being called to find them or reach out to them at the perfect moment. And some are strangers. So I think we can be attuned to this web of our connectedness. I think distress, really distinct suffering is a loud call across the web. A spider on its web is sensitive to all these different types of strands and subtle vibrations on the strands. And I think there's an intuitive knowingness in us, in the kind of industrialized, mechanical, absent God clockmaker worldview, that everything's a giant machine left to run to its own devices. That perspective that took root over the last several hundred years as the dominant developed world paradigm, it kind of leaves us bereft of all of our intuition, all of these subtle ways of inner knowing. And I feel like my whole life has unfolded as this journey to get me more and more in touch with the experience, the connectedness, and the language to share it with others. So that's where I am today.
It's phenomenal. I can use all of that. Oh my goodness, beautiful and so well said. I resonate and I deeply feel that.
Yeah.
Beautiful, way of describing, this tension between modern society and this other more magical kind of intuitive way of knowing that's more connected. And I wonder, if you feel open to sharing some key stories, moments where you felt that other world of magic kind of open up, and any other experiences that have helped push you along this path, because that's really courageous to take this step and leave the known, the certain 9 to 5 academia, and leap off into this, unknown world.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question with many, many layers to it. I feel like when I made the decision to leave academia in January 2020, I envisioned myself as the fool of the tarot deck. I'm the being on the cliff, and often portrayed as someone stepping off with a grin on their face and a pack on their back and a little dog at their feet. And I had a little dog in my life, a little terrier. She looks like the dog on the full tarot deck from the traditional sort of rider tarot, and many other depictions have the little dogs for whatever reason. So it's like I have my pack and I've got my little dog, and I'm just going to step off the cliff. And the fool is smiling, and the posture is very confident. It's just walking forward as if there's solid ground beneath your feet, and you can see that there's a cliff. There is no solid ground after the next step. And I feel like I've been in a sort of 3-year long leap of faith, and it's still evolving. I don't really feel that I've landed yet. And I think there's multiple options about what's going to happen after that next step off the cliff. One of the options is that something will rise to meet us. We won't really fall very far. Another option is that we will fall a long way and maybe not even be harmed when we land. Maybe we're cushioned at the end. Maybe we fall and go splat, which is our fear. Or maybe, we learn to fly. Maybe we learn to navigate in another way, so that what seems like a fall isn't a fall. And I just hold all of those possibilities in mind, and I try to deal with my anxiety or apprehension about the falling, going splat possibility. And the word that you use, courageous, has been incredibly important to me. So I have an initiative to teach meditation, and I call that courageous compassion connection. So that is the name for my initiative, where I partnered with other nonprofits rather than establishing a new freestanding nonprofit. And many of the programs that I offer are in meditation, especially compassion work, which I really feel like is my true calling. And I feel that synchronicity and coincidence are means by which we can understand and enhance compassion in our world. So for me, the two are very intertwined. Being a contemplative person, I'm also a musician, so I put it in the songs and the music I create. I infuse my understandings as much as I can have them into my poetry, which becomes some of my songs, my music, and then the Coincidence Project. So I'm working right now to weave it all together. And, courageous compassion connection was because I see these as three qualities our world desperately needs. We must connect. We will continue to harm and to other. It's easy to inflict harm on anything we have othered, and connection offers a solution to that. And if we connect, in what way should we connect? Compassionately. What's it going to take for us to connect compassionately? A lot of courage, a lot. And I have my own, sort of inner work that to embrace my uncertainty, to be outside of a traditional full-time, stable kind of existence, and to go into more of a free fall or freelance mode, and sometimes I love language as a poet and someone who likes to speak and likes to write, likes to interact with others, and sometimes you have to have the breakdown to have the breakthrough. So I have hoped that, in this sort of extended leap of faith, that I'm breaking down some things, and sometimes feeling like I'm going through some breakdowns. And also maybe that's going to enable me to have these breakthroughs of understanding. I'll share a story of how I envision that web of connection between all of us, because I just yesterday launched my first song of a new musical project called The Web Weaver. And all of the tracks for Web Weaver will be collaborative with other artists and musicians, and singing in other languages. This first track is in Spanish. And the notion of the Web Weaver has been coming to me for such a long time. It feels really, really cool to have a project I'm naming to kind of claim that piece of my own way of seeing the world. And one of the first things that was so synchronous on my path to where I am now, and the work that I wish to do to help heal and serve the world, was at the end of college. I was an orientation leader. I graduated in a December graduation, so I had that final fall semester. I didn't have to take a massive overload of courses. I just had a few to finish my degrees. And I signed up to be an orientation leader, and you could do an extra freshman orientation activity. There's some more like ropes courses, or going on mountain biking tours, or river trips, and just brilliant stuff. I went to Guilford College, brilliant, beautiful little Quaker college in North Carolina. And they had this robust first year program. So I checked the box. My number one choice would be Vision Quest. I didn't even really know what a Vision Quest would be, but I was like, that sounds great. So the first coincidence, how did that come to me? All of a sudden I'm offered, and I was able to go for free, because the freshmen would pay extra for these additional orientation type programs, bonding type programs, but they had one, counselor person. And yet I could counsel others, which is part of my calling, but I also got to go for myself. And on my first Vision Quest, my guide that led us on the quest, her name was Alicia Pinero, and she trained at the School of Lost Borders in Southern California in rites of passage Vision Quest work with Stephen Foster and Meredith Little. And they were inspired and taught by Lakota Sioux elders. So it's honoring a Native American tradition. It is adapted into modern rites of passage and shared with Rainbow Tribe, with people from many backgrounds. And you do a 3-day and 3-night solo and fast. It ends up being about 96 hours of not eating. And we prepared for 2 months. We met once a week for 2 months for many hours each week, and did a lot of soul searching to be ready to go out on the Vision Quest, and to be ready to camp. And then in the solo, we didn't use a tent, so we needed to know some wilderness sensibilities about how to do that safely. And at the end of the quest, you have a power night. So the third night that you're out on your own, you're invited to stay up a long time, even stay up all night. And you're away from society. Now you're even away from the campsite of others. Now you're away from food. You're only having water. And if people have hypoglycemia or something, they can eat a little bit, but you're invited to fast if that's possible for your body. And I was fasting. And so you're in kind of a natural inducement of an altered state. And in the power night, now you add sleep deprivation to the mix. And I stayed up all night, and the sun was rising in the morning. And I had a camera with me, although I didn't use it very often. I took this photo of the sun. It looked like the dragon in the clouds that morning. It was very rose and orange. And I was looking out, and I could visualize a tether to the people that loved me. And we had several days out on the mountain before the solo. So I'd already been gone 6 or 7 days from my people back in normal society. And I literally felt this sort of solar plexus level root of the web. And I could see it as like, I saw it as like silver, almost like moonlight illuminated web, expanding and going out. And I saw these look like pearls or glass beads of energy being conducted along the web, like dewdrops on a spider web or raindrops on a spider web. It was kind of like that, but they were moving, and they were silver or kind of translucently white or something. And they were being pulled from me to the people that love me because they were calling me home. They were pulling my energy to them, saying, come home, come home. We're freaked out. We don't know what this vision quest is. Why are you out in nature fasting for 96 hours? Are you a crazy person? We're freaking out that you might not get back to us safely. I could feel all of this worry and concern from my boyfriend of several years, my parents, my professors that I was close with, my friends. I could just feel it. I could feel all the people pulling on the web. And it created this like desperate sense of urgency in me, that feeling that I could like pretty much see, like I need to get home off the mountain. And typically the group would return to the base camp and spend several days doing our stories of what it all meant to us, our synthesis in community of the small group up on the mountain still. And I actually asked my group if we could do that back in town, 4 hours drive away with our to sleep with our people, and then come back and spend 2 more days at the place we generally met together to share stories, but not do it on the mountain because I felt like I'd been called home. Like, get home, we are losing it, that you are out there. It's too much. We can't handle it. And because that intuition was honored in the whole process of rites of passage of Vision Quest, the group made a collective decision, and they said, yeah, we'll go home early and we'll honor that, and we'll do our storytelling back in town versus staying on the mountain 2 more days. So that was the first time I really saw the web. And certainly since I just launched a musical project yesterday called Web Weaver, so it was 1996 when I went on that first Vision Quest to 2022. So it's a long story I just told in a short time.
That's incredible, though. I mean, it sounds like you're still receiving the gifts from that vision quest and having that insight and such a visual awareness of and physical, emotional, of that connection.
Yeah, and I've been deeply interested in the work of trackers and animal communicators because those are sensibilities I'm hoping to continue to cultivate and open myself to, and perhaps find, some people to apprentice to in the future. I'm welcoming that. So in studying the trackers, some of the Bushmen in Africa, they describe their sense of the path to the animal, and often they would be a specialist. So there'd be someone who was very good at always finding the lions, and there'd be someone else that was very good at finding the snakes to avoid, or what have you, like different kinds of animals. And then some maybe were more kind of universally gifted versus specialists, but regardless, they would see it as almost like an arrow path on the ground, and it looked like silver or illuminated moonlight. And the description of the Bushmen in one of the specials that I was watching about advanced naturalist trackers and their training with indigenous elders, the description was exactly what I experienced. And to hear someone else, from an ancient wisdom tradition, like narrating my own experience that had nothing to do with my upbringing, And I had to just sort of make up language to even understand what I had experienced. It's like, oh, wow, we are really connected, and we have forgotten some things that some of the indigenous elders really, they're continuing to hold that wisdom, and that's one of the things I hope to do in this work, is to honor the earth and all beings, and to really honor the indigenous ones, the First Nations people of the world, and to honor elders, because we often disregard the wisdom of elders. And certainly in the developed world, we can disregard the honor of the First Nations indigenous people and their worldviews. So I'm trying to bring that sensibility into more of the mainstream through my presence in the Coincidence Project and in the contemplative work I'm doing now.
Wow, that is beautiful. So interesting. Um, I'm curious about, because you sound like someone who's very, intuitive, sensitive. You told me a little bit about your experiences with animals. I wonder, looking back on your childhood, do you have any memories of, dreams, animal communications, these kinds of experiences? Was that maybe encouraged, shut down? And then it sounds like you're rediscovering maybe those gifts or embracing them more, kind of coming back full circle. If that's too
Yeah.
personal, feel free to say no
Oh, no.
about that, but yeah.
Yeah, another of the major influences on my worldview was my mother, Janet Trail. And she was a writer. She taught creative writing, and she was a tree hugger. And we would go to national parks all over the country. She taught school, junior high and then high school, throughout her career. And my father became a guidance counselor and worked in the school. So summers free, family station wagons. It was like the Griswolds on vacation in the Lampoons. We were like out in the family station wagon driving across country. We had family in Nevada and California, and Illinois and Wisconsin. So we just drive all over the place. And we hugged so many trees. We would have group hugs, and we would like get to the big trees, and we would all, with my brother, my mom and dad and I, would all try to wrap ourselves around the big trees and like give them a collective hug. And my mom just adored the trees, and Bernie Beitman and I are very close now, and he speaks with the trees. And so I feel like there's a continuity of that connection to the natural world. And I've certainly had some interactions with trees that have been remarkable and very healing for me. And Vision Quest, let's see, I was 21 at the time that I went through that experience. And it really expanded my awareness of what's possible, and like listening and being open to the messages that might come from everything, from the stones, from the waters, from all the animals. And I've always just adored animals. So I'm certainly open to, I feel a lot more emotional information from them, their sense of things and my sense of things, than hearing it as language. I feel like it's like tuning your radio, and it sounds like a little bit of static, and eventually you get to the station and it comes in as language. That's what some of the animal communicators and plant communicators have. And that's a gift to actually Bernie has with trees. He can really tune in. He receives it as languaged information or communication. I don't yet, but I hope to. I receive a lot of emotional information. And so it's more of a feeling sense of interbeing. I love Thich Nhat Hanh and the kind of engaged Buddhism. I'm myself kind of secular teacher, but trained by also a lot of Buddhist elders, as well as the indigenous elders that handed down the rites of passage perspective on things. I kind of combine those two myself. And Thich Nhat Hanh is certainly a teacher that's had a huge influence on me, and his notion of our interdependence and our interbeingness. It's how I see the world. It's how I'm living my life. And I would say in my early childhood, it was encouraged. My mom pretty much considered herself a transcendentalist. She loved, Emerson and Thoreau and the Dickinsons and the Alcotts. There was whole movement of writers and thinkers and philosophers in early Americas, especially taking off with transcendentalism. And it's kind of a modern movement to honor the sacredness of nature. It picks up on that indigenous worldview, but gives it a new name. And that's really how I was raised. I was really raised as a transcendentalist, because I always listen to the On Being podcast. They say, what are the spiritual roots of your childhood? How does that influence you today? And so I'm like, oh, I love that question. I want to answer it. So my friend and I, we wrote our answers out to each other so that we could have the chance to answer it. So we actually blogged about it to each other. And you know, that made me kind of recognize, oh yeah, my religious roots were transcendental. They were not religious per se, because that's kind of a naturalist or philosophy movement. But you know, we went to New England and visited all their different homes and the sites, and we like went into Emily Dickinson's garden, my mom and I, and she recited aloud the poem, some keep the Sabbath going to church, you know, but I keep it just in nature, you know, with a bobolink for a chorister and the sky for a dome, something like that. I don't have it fully memorized. And we both kind of just wept. We were so moved. We like sat and held hands in Emily Dickinson's garden. And, you know, and it was a Sunday. Like we crept into the garden. It was property of UMass Amherst. You weren't supposed to go onto the grounds. I'm sorry we did. But, you know, we held hands and we just felt like God verklempt, you know, we just tears running down our face with just like the beauty of being in her garden and connecting with, you know, man built these separate structures to connect to God. But for me, the sacredness of the universe is in every leaf, and, you know, it's in bad weather, it's in good weather, it's in the, you know, just what we experience in the environment around us. And I do feel that that's the way I was raised. So it set me up well to get where I am today. Luckily, you know, I didn't have to fight against a kind of contrary or conflicting upbringing. I went further out. My mom was a little more of a pragmatist, and sometimes I would tell her about my synchronicity experiences, and she would say, "Oh, okay, yeah." And you know, we had a beautiful day. We traveled together to England, where my mom was born in 2011. And I'll share a beautiful story of our time together, going to visit the Chalice Well at Glastonbury. And I have the seal of the Chalice Well, the Vesica Piscis symbol. Actually, it's the tattoo on the back of my neck. And um, you know, getting tattoos was also bridges way too far for my mom. She was so humble and modest, and you know, she was not going to ink her skin. Um, and so we decided to go visit the Chalice Well. I tried to find it on a previous trip to England and never found it. I was in the village. I was in the village. It was like 2001. We didn't have GPS. We didn't have the internet at our beck and call. I couldn't figure it out from my hand guide to England, how to. So we went into the town, and I loved the town of Glastonbury, but I never found the Chalice Well, which I had read a lot about. My mom's family comes from Southern England, so I felt a bit of an ancestral connection there. And so my mom and I said, well, we were staying in London. Let's take the train and we'll just go find it. Somehow we'll find it. So we took the train to a place called Wells, I think, and then we had to get a bus. And as we're waiting in line for a bus ticket at that Wells train station, a woman comes up to us. Her name was Polly. And she said, you're going to the well at Glastonbury, right? And we said, well, yes. And she said, I think I'm supposed to travel with you today. I'll take you there when we arrive. Is that okay? And we said, well, yes. So, yes, please. And Polly was an intuitive and a mystic, and she had been living without a home for several years. I think there had been a major loss or death in her family that kind of freed her from owning a home, and she just felt called to wander and like traditional minstrels or mystics or something. And she had been traveling around Europe and the British Isles for 4 years, always staying through the kindness of strangers or acquaintances, people just giving her places to be. Oh, well, you know, you could camp here, you could stay in this barn, or we have this loft, or we have this guest room. And 4 years she'd been just sort of intuitively moving through the world. And she told us many amazing stories on our route to Glastonbury. We arrive and she walks us from where the bus let us off. Um, and there's actually a second spring called the White Spring, and a group of friends had recently bought it and opened it to the public for the first time in at least decades. She led us there as well. So we had like layers of experience because this guide found us. And it continued to unfold because I mentioned my Vision Quest work. And I then apprenticed. I continued to help with the quests for 2.5 years. And then Alicia, my guide, said, would you like to train in this work to become a guide? So I did that. I did that process, and I began working with another person that trained with me, Kim Yarbray, and she and I would do talks, and we developed an 8-week class called Everyday Shamanism towards walking in harmony and balance. And we led that class a number of times in North Carolina, and eventually led a full Vision Quest group of students from that class. And so as we're walking to the Red Spring, the main chalice well, not the White Spring that's in a different location, but the gardens of the Glastonbury chalice well, someone comes up to me and they said, "Are you the quest guide, Juliet?" And I said, "Yes, but I don't know if I'm the one you're looking for." And I went up to the well, and there was another woman named Juliet, and she was also a quest guide, but trained in the British Isles. And she was there with a group of women, and they had were holding a circle and singing prayers to heal the broken world, which is I've turned it into a poem. This day of flowing synchronicities in Glastonbury, and I hope for it to become one of my new songs with the Web Weaver project. And I won't say much of it. It just begins with, "At the well they knew me, all the women gathered, singing their prayers to heal the broken world," because they invited me to join their circle. And my mom was by this point like, "What?" Because I told her about this. I told her that my life could have this magical, numinous quality. But she'd never been in one of my days of mystery and wonder, as Paul Simon said. And she said, "I'm good. I'm going to go sit in the rose garden right over there. You take your time. I love that you're with these women. Don't rush. I'm happy for a rest in this beautiful garden. I'm going to go sit by the rose hedges. And yeah, and then we can continue our walk." And so I stood with the women and was part of the ceremony, led by another woman named Juliet, who looked like my Vision Quest partner, Kim. She looked like my partner, but she had my name, and she was doing my work in the Glastonbury area. And I was mistaken for her by strangers. And,
That is so cool. That is
yeah.
phenomenal. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So these things, when you have an experience unfold of these things, it's like, there is so much more to heaven and earth than is dreamt of in
That
our
is so
general philosophy.
magical. Oh my goodness. Wow. What an
Yeah.
experience. There is, I think, something to be said too. I don't know if you've noticed this about, traveling or kind of being in that beginner's mind state and synchronicity. Have you noticed
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I have other friends that work and live abroad and travel avidly, and we all connect around these kind of magical stories, and they're beautiful travel tales of the kindness of strangers and that kind of thing, that are another, I think, emerging archetype to help us talk about these kind of beautiful synchronicity, coincidence experiences that happen. And, in some of the research on how coincidences happen for people, they seem to happen in times of disruption. So at transition points or disruption points, they may not happen as much when we're in a rut of a habit, a groove, doing things on repeat. We do the rinse, lather, repeat thing, and like we end up somewhere and we can't even remember the drive that got us from home to the place we always go, because we just kind of check out. And the human mind, the brain is set up to do that, to ignore a lot of stimulus and only pay attention to what's necessary. But when you're traveling, all stimulus might be necessary because you're navigating, you're in the unknown. Our kind of primitive self is aware of threats. And so it's scanning the environment. We can take for granted the safety of our environment and kind of tune out when it's so known. We can't do that when it's unknown. And that can happen after a death or a birth or a graduation, a divorce, a job change, a move, on a holiday. Disruption itself. It creates this time when we're more open and more alert, and we're not doing things in any kind of anticipated or expected or habitual way. We're having to navigate anew. And I think as we're navigating, kind of going from perception and opportunity to the next, We can bring things together. And I think high emotion and high need are other qualities. Bernie has this weird coincidence survey and have, thousands of people have taken it now. And at least documents the ways that coincidences show up for people. We hope to do some deeper dive research in the coming years into this. But we've seen that for sure from thousands of people reporting about their coincidence and synchronicity experiences, that they come at times of high need, high emotion, and doing something different from your typical routine, disruption. So anxiety is a way of increasing our emotional state. And to me, to take it back to that image of the web, it's like when I stood on the cliff at the Vision Quest and felt my people kind of tugging on my web, come home, we're freaking out. I feel like the high emotion makes the tug more frenetic. It's more like, come on. And, I would say that moment in my story I just shared, that my mom and I were in this bus train depot. We'd arrived. The last time I had gotten to Glastonbury, I never found the well. And so I was a little worried and anxious because I already had the tattoo. I'm like, I must see the thing that's inspired me as a symbol. I have to commune. I hope I don't miss it again, because I missed it last time. I went all the way across the world to Southern England out to Glastonbury, and I didn't find the well. And so there was an anxiety that was like quiet. I wasn't voicing it to my mom, but I was aware of it. And we were in this unknown kind of environment because I'd been in a rental car that last time. Now I was going from a train to a bus. And even what line do we get in? And then that woman, Polly, found us. And she just said, I was supposed to be with you guys today. Do you mind if I'm your guide? And it was like, no, please help yourself. Be our guide. And there were many more little things I could tell you about that exchange. Throughout the entire journey with her, it felt gifted. It felt like a gift. And from what or from who, I don't quite know. From the way things are, or the way things can be, the universe. I don't know its proper name. It might just be love. Maybe the fundamental nature of the universe is love, and it was a gift from the universal force of all that exists, that I think is a loving, meaningful existence. It can be very harsh, and we certainly go through pain and suffering too. But there's this possibility, even in anxiety, even in transition, even in disruption, of allowing such a gift to exist. If we had brushed off Polly, we might not have found the chalice well. And I know we would never have found the White Spring. And the White Spring is at the foot of the hill where the Red Spring flows. And it's under the mountain. It comes out, and there's this private structure around it, a private building. And you go in, and it's perfectly dark, just lit by candlelight. And there's a pool you can even bathe in. And people go to sit in the healing waters of the White Spring. And for years, because it's a private structure, only the owner had access. And this community group of friends had purchased it when it became available, and were taking turns to volunteer to open it. It was free and open to the public. This was 2011. So it could have changed, but in that moment, that's what was happening. And I had the first dear friend, younger than me, die just before that trip. My friend Bryce died, and he was a dear soul. I have a song I wrote for him called "The Death of Glitter," because if ever a being sparkled, my friend Bryce did. And I was really carrying, my loss on that trip. And I was wearing a ring that had been his on my pinky, this little bronze, 3 woven pieces, like a braided belt. And I'd had it on since he died, this was June, and he died in April. So it had been about 3 months of time, 2 to 3 months. And we went into the White Spring after my beautiful chalice well experience of praying with a circle of women led by another Juliet, the prayers to heal the broken world. And then we wandered back down the walkway, the road together, just my mom and I. Polly took her leave. She said, I'm called elsewhere now. You're where you need to be. She left us at the gate. And so she left, and my mom said, I'm still good. I sense there's more for you in there. She peeked her head in. She said, I'm just going to sit and rest again outside. I'm fine. I'm just going to commune with the, being here. And I went inside to the pool, and there's this song that I had written long, long before as a first a cappella song. And I think I first recorded it with DJ Stroud in like 2003 or four, called The Ecstasy. And it's about the agony and the ecstasy of being. And so I just started singing the a cappella version in this sort of cavern, this rock, maybe limestone cavern space, and just candle flame and this pool in front of me in the darkness. And I was just singing to reach Bryce. It was like a prayer, a blessing, way to try to sing that song to him. And tears were kind of rolling down my face as I was doing it. And the acoustics were amazing, rock and water. And so it was almost as if I was in harmony with myself, because the voice was coming back, and the vibration and the resonance. And at the end, as the song faded, I went around a little corner, and there was a altar set up to the sort of Jack in the Green, the stag or horned one, which is like one of the male masculine keepers of the forest. Kind of Druidic and other traditions speak of that archetype. And so someone had created out of tree branches this kind of suggestion of a stag with the horns. And I was really thinking of the kind of younger stag, not the elder stag with all the many, many points, but the kind of younger Jack in the Green or something, not the elder green man, but like a younger one, and connecting that to my friend Bryce, who died when he was just 25. And I slipped the ring off my finger, and I worked it all the way down the branch. I could get it all the way down to the kind of be this like right by the head, and then there were branches, like to leave it on this stag figure. And I walked out, and there was a whole small group of people standing around the mouth, and they were just sort of like honoring the song they'd heard and not really knowing what it was about. But I think something about my mourning, the privacy of mourning and honoring, like singing a song that's reverential and beautiful, but certainly with a heavier heart than I might usually sing it. And no one had entered the space, but they were just sort of all standing around in an arc around it, like I don't think anything was said. I just slowly moved out and got my mom, and we departed, and people could then keep using the white spring. But yeah, it was just a flow of these beautiful things. I mean, that I was carrying the ring of my friend, as well as the pain in my heart of losing him. He's one of my closest friends, and have this chance to honor him. We never would have found it without Polly. Thank you, Polly. She was a wanderer in Europe and the British Isles, so I could never connect with her again. It was just that moment, like we just had her for a couple of hours, and she got us exactly where we need to be. And I feel like we can let go of needing to know how things need to unfold, and the gift of something coming through to guide us and help us get exactly where we're meant to be, because that moment was such a release of it was so healing.
What a beautiful way of honoring your friend. And again, without all of those elements combining, that experience wouldn't have happened. And it sounds like it was very healing and,
Yeah.
transformative to honor him in that way. I mean, that's incredibly beautiful. I mean, I think of in my mind the contrast between an experience like that, honoring your grief, your loved one, in such a sacred, private way versus at a funeral, which, again, can provide some relief, but that is just an incredibly beautiful story. Thank you for
Yep.
sharing.
I hope Bryce gets to catch it in the afterlife. I hope they're screening your documentary.
Yes.
or just tuning into our video connection. They might not even have to get the edited final version. Maybe I always like to think, that they're, for me, the tattoo of the chalice well, the reason I got it, what it symbolized to me, is seeing beyond the veils.
Mm.
In the book The Mists of Avalon, which is fictionalized but based on something, there's some intuitive mythical truth I think that comes through um, the novel by Marion Zimmer Bradley of The Mists of Avalon, and it felt very beautiful to me. And in that novel, the women are the mystics, and that feels very true to me. There is the known druidic path was primarily masculine, but there is a female line of the druids that continues to this day. I met one of the members of this path, and she knew me from my tattoo, and she came up to me and she was wearing it as a ring, and she thought I was a trainee of this path because they still use it as their symbol, and I didn't even know it existed. I knew intuitively it must exist, but I didn't know it existed. And I met this, woman like 2 years ago, and she trains in this path in this work, and we had amazing conversations. She was just visiting Charlottesville for a weekend. We spent a couple days together, went on some hikes and stuff to talk further, and met at Conscious Dance. I love Conscious Dance. It's a good place to find these kinds of people. And I got the tattoo because I'd been looking for a symbol that I wanted as a tattoo that other people I'm close with that I feel like are in my tribe might share, might get it if that felt right for them. It was always a shared symbol. And I'd been looking for more than a decade. And I went into this little jewelry store. This is a cool story of synchronicity as well, actually. I went down to Lynchburg, Virginia, which I would say is not a beacon of enlightenment. The Falwell Industries we're all based there. And it has lynching in its name. And that makes me deeply, deeply uncomfortable. So I was there one day, and I decided to go into this sweet looking little jewelry and rock crystal type shop. And I walked in and I was like, wait, because I had the feeling, and this is coincidental that I'm thinking to tell you this whole story sequence in itself. I walked in and I flashed on that first time I went to Glastonbury in the rental car and never found the well. Because the thing I found that day was this amazing crystal shop, and you went upstairs and it was all painted in deep, vibrant greens and blues, and it had fountains with the sound of fresh water inside a space. And it felt like I had stepped into the fairy realm. I was like, how is this an indoor space? I feel like I'm outside in a forest. What did you guys just do in this space? It was like a portal. And that was what I found my first trip to Glastonbury, which had happened 10 years before my current story that I had shared. So 2001 to 2011, those two different times in Glastonbury. So this is in between those two times. I found this crystal and rock jewelry shop in Lynchburg, and it only existed for a few years and it went away. And when I walked in, I was like, I don't know why, but I'm feeling the Glastonbury shop. And I went to the jewelry cases. I went right to them like a beeline. And I'd been looking for my tattoo symbol for, like I said, more than 10 years. I'd been waiting for it to come. And I looked right down, and there was a necklace about the size of my shell necklace today, about this size of the chalice well. And I was like, that's it. That's my symbol. I don't even know where it's from. I don't know what it means, but that's it. I just know that's it. So I said, I would like to buy this. And then I talked with the woman. It turned out it was the owner working that day. And I said, your shop reminds me mysteriously of this amazing fairy crystal shop in Glastonbury. And she said, oh my God, I founded this shop because I went there, and I came back and I was like, we need this. The same shop, like the fountain and the green walls and the moss and the plants and like everything, like the portal, the transcendence of the, something like a fairy realm or druidic realm or something. And she was like, yeah, no, I know. That's why I built this shop. I created it. But hers was like in a strip mall in Lynchburg, Virginia. And it didn't have painted walls, and maybe it had a fountain. I don't remember. It was much more traditional. You kind of walk into like jewelry and crystals and probably some scarves and some hippie bags, like tie-dye things, like that kind of shop. But I felt that other shop when I walked in. I felt it like, whoa, wait, why am I thinking of that shop? It didn't look anything like it, but I felt it. And then to talk to her, and she's like, yeah, that shop of all places on this earth was my inspiration. She's like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know how I know, but I just got, and then I got the chalice symbol, the Vesica Piscis. It turns out it's an ancient mathematical symbol. And so it exists archetypally through time. It being used on the chalice well is one instance. It's one manifestation of the symbol. But for me, I took it from all the things it can mean. Also, I'm a Pisces, and it was called the Vesica Piscis when I looked it up, which is like the Piscean vessel or vesicle, the Vesica Piscis, which I'm like, okay, that works too. And I thought a lot about the women mystics of the traditions and the sacred healing waters, the water of the well, because they would sometimes drink from these sacred waters in order to receive visions to connect to the realms beyond ours. And so when I got the tattoo, my intention was just to open myself to whatever's possible, to see beyond the kind of pragmatic three-dimensional reality of the here and now, whatever other realms we might perceive, where I hope in one of them our loved ones continue to dwell and perhaps can stay aware of us. And perhaps we get to continue to connect and feel them. Some people do, some people don't. But of all those realms, can I just be may I be open to receive those? May I be a person who might see, a seer.
Oh my gosh, that is so incredible. Speaking of which, I'm sure you've probably heard the story of Philip K. Dick seeing that same symbol, the Vesica Piscis.
Tell me.
Oh
I
my
don't know the
God.
story.
Oh, I have the book right here.
Oh my gosh,
I
your
believe you
robots
don't know
driven
this.
electric sheep. I don't know this.
I've been obsessed with that symbol as well. Hold on, let me
Well, may I offer it to you too, because it's for all the tribe. Whoever feels called to have that tattoo should have it, I think.
That is so crazy. So it's called his hold on, I have to find it in here. I think it's, pardon me for.
Oh, I love this. No, this is so cool. It's just like when I found that woman that was a female druid from a whole tradition I didn't know about because of the symbol. She found me. I was like,
Oh yeah,
this, I picked the right symbol because when it links to something else, it still continues to make sense. And
yeah,
it's so surprising that the layers of meaning I learn about it, it still feels right. It never feels like, oh, that was a little dodgy. I think I'm just appropriating it and like then twisting it to my purpose because I want to make it work. Instead, it feels like there's just these resonances that are like, yep.
Oh, hold on, I have to. It's his. Oh, here it is. I think. Okay, let me see if I can just find the direct page. He had this amazing. Okay, it's called it. You can look it up on the internet, or I'll send it to you. His 2374 experience. And he had just had I think like a tooth extracted or something like that.
Yeah.
And this woman shows up at his door delivering like prescriptions or something like that. And she's wearing the Vesica Piscis symbol, and the light just catches it to where it flashes in his eye, and he has this experience of opening up to all of his past lives, having this incredible spiritual experience of like download of information. And he became, just like obsessed with the symbol. Wow. And yeah, hold on. I'm not explaining it like as well as I can, but I can definitely find an article that references it. This book is amazing by Anthony Peake. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yeah, no.
Called
Anthony
the
Peake.
Life of Philip K. Dick, because a lot of his novels were precognitive. So you've probably seen
Wow.
movie not with Tom Cruise in the well, he wrote like Blade Runner, The Adjustment
Yeah.
Bureau. Why am I not thinking of the main one with Tom Cruise and
Minority Report?
Minority Report? Yeah. So, he wrote, yeah, all these incredible books that, were kind of prophesizing the technology, the different. But yeah, that was a major life-changing experience for him involving that symbol. So I just find that fascinating. Who brought that up?
Wow. I have to tell you two other things that are pinging off of this. The first is that I just saw Minority Report as the thing you were trying to find in your brain. Like, that's why I picked it. Tom Cruise has made a lot of freaking movies. And
Yeah.
I didn't remember that Philip K. Dick was the author of the story of that movie. I don't know if I ever even knew that. I
Yeah.
know it's a sci-fi film, but that's it. I saw it years and years and years ago. But it was like, I could almost see like right beneath the layer of your conscious thoughts, like you were, it was like Minority Report, pick me, pick me. So it's like, are you thinking Minority Report? And this happened to me 2 days ago. I'm working with an amazing mind body therapist named Chris Coslet, and we're just starting to with it. We don't know what it's gonna bring. We're just starting to kind of like get together, and he does body work, massage, and chiropractic education, but a lot of myofascial massage work, but also embodiment and thinking about how it relates to our minds. And he was trying to think of something. He was telling me a story of a friend who teaches at a nearby university and lives in our town, but doesn't teach in our town. She commutes. And Charlottesville, Virginia has a ton of higher education institutions all around it. From you might live here and teach all the way up to DC, Northern Virginia, pretty comfortably, particularly because some people do some days at a distance and then they might travel and be there a day or two a week. And he was thinking about it. He was massaging me, and I was like face down on the table, and he was telling me this story, and I just felt it bumping around underneath the surface of his thoughts. And I was like, do you mean Longwood University? Is it Longwood? Longwood is very small. It's in like Farmville. I sort of felt like he was searching for Farmville. I almost felt like I could kind of see the map from here going south and then further west. Like, and I was like, I think you're thinking of Longwood. He's like, how did you know I'm thinking of Longwood? I'm like, I think I could kind of see it in your mind. So I know you're exploring precognitive, clairvoyant, telepathic kinds of phenomena in the context of synchronicity, which maybe coincidence and synchronicity can hold those within them. And we just, I think, had such a moment happen in real
Yes.
time. So that's cool.
That's really
And
cool.
your story of Philip K. Dick reminded me of the rest of my story when I got the tattoo.
Perfect.
So it's a very nice story. I was with my my best friend Pam in San Francisco. She had moved back there, and I was there visiting, and I was gonna get the tattoo. And I had told her it was for the members of my tribe, and we've been very close for 20 years. And so she was like, I'm getting it with you. So we were getting it, the same size, same exact prints, about yay big, on our right back. And she has other tattoos. So she was getting it kind of nested right behind her sternum. And I have mine right at the base of my neck, above my shoulder blades. Hers is more between her shoulder blades, but it fits her other tattoos. So we went to this place called Mom's Body Shop. Such a cool name for a tattoo parlor, Mom's Body Shop. And we got the tattoo. And it was a bit of an altered state because I'd never had a tattoo before, and just that amount of like feeling pain and having your spine vibrate and stuff, it like puts you somewhere else. So I was feeling really woozy and out of it after that. And we met up with a whole group of her friends somewhere near there to go get absolutely delicious Thai food. Like you do in San Francisco, California in general. Great food from like Thai and Chinese and all that. Vietnamese, all of them. And I turned to the girl next to me who's wearing this beautiful kind of low cut 20s like dress. And on her sternum is a larger color version of the Vesica Piscis. She had it on her chest. I mean, I looked to Pam's friend that I don't know. It's a group of like 12 or 15 people. I'm seated next to her. I turn. I've still got the bandage on mine. You can't even see mine yet. And it's just black and white. It's just like like a stamp, because I wanted it like the tribal seal. So you could get tiny or you could get very big. You could make it ornate and do it with flowers and color, or just the seal. So mine's the very simplified version for now. And hers was ornate and beautiful. It had flowers growing around it. Sometimes the center of the two interlocking circles is bisected by a line, which turns them into two interlocking peace signs, which I love. That it becomes peace. And it's actually a sword that going into the ground with flowers growing from it. It's about that part of the symbolism is the story of the warrior ending the violence and becoming one who grows. So rather than one who destroys, you bury your sword, and from the sword, you begin the garden. And that's imagery that speaks to me in my life path well too. And it's like not a path of violence, it's a path of tending, a path of nurturing, a path of planting seeds. And it was just gorgeous. And it was like, I have a photo somewhere in all of my records of this, as it would have been 2008 or 6 or something when I got that tattoo and had this experience. But it's the only other time I have run across a stranger with that tattoo. And it was where I went after getting the tattoo. And it was just like, she turned towards me and it was like, so when you were telling the story of the woman at the door and it was here and it went like this, I was like, oh, crazy that I had that experience. But right after, I got the tattoo myself after looking for the symbol for like 12 years or something.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. And when you were telling the story of the meaning of that symbol, I just got the chills. That was just,
Whew. I know, the end of violence, the end of strife, the beginning of tending. You know, my favorite novel of all time is The Fifth Sacred Thing by Starhawk. And, you know, I've always thought if we came to the end of digitized civilization, the grid fell, and we had to become story keepers again, and we each memorized a book so its knowledge was not lost. I volunteer, I sign up to memorize every word of The Fifth Sacred Thing and to continue to tell that story. Because for me, it's the most important story I've ever seen told. And it's after society has fallen, the numbers of humans have thinned. There are very few survivors left, and there's an enclave based around San Francisco Bay Area that become gardeners. They create this beautiful pantheistic, honoring all or no religious traditions, accepting all different ways of love, of gender identity, of sexuality and expression, of monogamy or celibacy or polyamory. It's a place that allows multiplicity of the flowers in the garden, of the ways one might live, of the ways one might worship. They all are embraced by this community. It's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place to imagine anyone ever getting to be. You know, it's the kind of world I'm trying to help build. And at the beginning of the novel, they become aware that there's another society that's quite violent in nature. And I could just leave it there. That's enough to get anybody who hasn't heard the book to read it. But it's like the people that are violent in nature have captured someone who is traveling from this idyllic community. So what happens when they learn about the people of this Bay Area group that survived? Because they only had enough resources to do one of two things: plant food or build guns. When everything fell apart and humankind was mostly decimated back to much smaller numbers, before the story begins. But it's the tales the elders of this community tell. It's a several generations into the time of this upheaval, and they say, you know, we could only plant food, or we could create weapons. There wasn't enough people or resources left to do both, and so they created food. They created gardens. They took out the city streets, and they have, you know, permaculture everywhere. And they don't have guns. They don't have a means to defend themselves. But, you know, you find in the novel that they've understood new ways of utilizing crystals, which are in all of our current technology, but they don't have to be buried in wires and plastic in this world. They can kind of directly utilize crystals, and they do have knowledge. They do have means. Their sort of intuitive and telepathic senses have become much more expressed. And will those kinds of skills or gifts be enough for these beautiful people in this utopia when they're discovered by a very, very violent totalitarian dystopia? So it's like, when they come together, can the utopia ever survive? And, you know, I think that's a question we have to be asking in our time right now. And, you know, and it describes everything about the world I've been born to live in. I see the swing towards totalitarianism across the world, towards hyper religiosity, towards fanaticism, towards fascism, and the militarization of youth. The way we take people who feel isolated, lost, alone in a meaningless universe. They're vulnerable. And if you give them, no, I've got answers, come be part of this group, I can tell you the whole story of everything you need to do. Just follow me. That's a very vulnerable place to take and manipulate and militarize people. And young men, and to some extent young women all over the planet, are being militarized by fanatics in this way. And I see coincidence and synchronicity is the exact antidote. It's the balm to that, because those people are so vulnerable because they think they are isolated and alone in a meaningless universe. But it's the flip. We are in a meaningful universe, fraught with meaning. It is a poem we get to live. It has all the richness and the nuance and the layers that a poem might offer. That's this reality, if we can only open to it and find our way back into this true, open, full reality. And we're not alone. We were never alone. That is an illusion of our separateness. Our society has enforced it upon us, and it's really come through patriarchy and a couple thousand years of bad news. And I'm really looking for the return to more balanced sacred feminine and sacred masculine in a healed whole dance. That power doesn't have to be held only by gender. I don't agree with that personally. It's just beyond that, and that we're so interconnected with one another, and those coincidence stories, like I was able to relay. I felt so connected to that shopkeeper in Lynchburg, Virginia. She went into a fairy store somewhere halfway around the world and had amazing experience. Well, a decade apart from her, so did I, and I felt her experience in the store she created because of it. And I could then go and like compliment her and tell her how her store evoked for me. This amazing place was like my favorite fairy shop I've ever been to. And she could get it because it was why she created the store. How could that happen? How did that, overlapping of events, for her to be thanked for what she was putting in the world in exactly the terms by which she had made that offering, to thank her for that without knowing that I was doing that. I mean, she was moved to tears by me understanding why she built the store. It was her life's work at that point. And in a place with the name lynching in its name, that's comfortable with letting that be after all this time, that hasn't changed it. And that still has very scary things afoot, and has had up to this present moment. And it worries me, and for her to create this offering of this beautiful, sweet fairy and jewelry and rock and crystal shop, that was important. It's a way we can be an activist in our own way. Our offerings, if they go against these paradigms that are dysfunctional, they are all a way of offering the counter. We need the antidotes, the balm, to help with these wounds, because the dysfunction that we see, the wounding of others, comes from being wounded. We just perpetuate the cycle. And so it's like, how can we stop? How do we plant the sword and begin to grow the flowers? How do we turn from a cycle of violence to a cycle of nurturing and cultivation? And that's what I'm trying to do with Courageous Compassion, Connection, and Coincidence Project, and in my music, like Web Weaver.
That's beautiful. Juliet, I think we're over an hour, but oh my God,
Yeah.
that's just perfect. I feel so connected to you too after just hearing your stories. I had no idea, we shared so many similar passions, with
Yeah.
the feminine and ideas of, healing, connection to nature. That was that was so beautiful. You are so well spoken. You're speaking from the heart, and oh my God, I just felt everything you said. Thank you so much. I feel like crying. That's so beautiful. It's really wonderful.
I know, and I love that you shared about Philip K. Dick and, his experience with the symbol and receiving stories as downloads,
Yeah.
because, poems of mine, songs of mine, they've come as downloads. The whole gestalt comes, we didn't even get to talk about time, which is a major theme of your film. And of course I have theories about time. but I've had dreams of past lives. They come to me in dreams. I remember my life, and I know everything about who I was then. And they're short dreams. They always are about the incidents that led up to my death, and sometimes include like right up to how I'm dying. And in that moment of the end of one's life, everything's very poignant. And as a download, everything comes about this person. And, there's just so many times when things seem to come from beyond ourselves and our boundaries and our ways of conscious knowing, and it just all reinforces to me we're in a meaningful, connected universe.
Yeah,
I hope that helps some of these people that are suffering and struggling and feeling that it's meaningless and disconnected.
exactly. I think a lot of people feel that way, and technology is, amplifying some of these. I mean, it's a tool for connecting, like doing what we're doing, but it's also a tool for, manipulation, control. It can be alienating, isolating for
Yeah.
people. But oh my gosh, this was just absolutely phenomenal. I'm so excited to, yeah, put this, yeah,
Work
this.
with the material. Yeah, well, feel free. I sent the release form to you, so
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah, if there anything comes that's tangential, it's not even your main film in the future, I don't
okay.
know, I can feel our connectedness. I can feel this, it's this fertile ground for something between us. So if there's anything else I can do, please let me know.
And likewise, I just feel really aligned and resonant with everything you said. Yeah. So,
Thank
anything
you.
else you want to add? Any kind of last plug, or does that feel pretty complete to
I've
you?
plugged it all, I think. There's more to say, but that would be the whole next interview, right?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So,
Future conversation.
future
Yeah. Thank you
conversations.
for making this film and
Yes.
speaking with people and curating this work and then getting it out. Oh, I will share something that might, you know, I'll say it as part of what we might one day use. So, one of my best friends is the artist Laura Lee Gullidge, and she does beautiful graphic novels, beautiful art. One of her pieces hangs right in my office, and my office is full of altars. It has little altars everywhere. Every surface I can is an altar. So it's a very fully sort of resonating, manifesting type office. And I have this drawing of hers right in the center where I can see it every day. It's a radio tower. And the top of the radio tower is a heart. And it has little lightning bolts of the current going out. And that's where I see us, you and me, and the Coincidence Project people, and the others I'm collaborating with on other projects. We're all these little signal towers coming from the heart, and we're just beaming it out.
Yeah.
And as the towers link up, can we link up around the world to kind of blanket the globe in this in beautiful messages instead of these scary ones that are so perpetuated by sort of fear mongering news orientation owned by corporations that profit from scaring us into buying things. No, thank you. So instead, can we all be these little signal towers, these beacons of heart, of love, of heart, and just, amplify? How can we amplify the signal? And that's the question I'm living with in my life right now. How may we all continue to link up
Mhm.
the radio towers of the hearts all over
Mhm.
the planet, hopefully into spaces beyond just Earth, but certainly all of Earth needs our care and attention right now. And how can we amplify the signal so that more people can receive some healing and some support for the ways the world has kind of caused woundedness and suffering for everyone. So I hope that this film can help to offer yet another signal tower, beaming out a message that offers some solace and maybe some alternatives from the typical worldview that can leave people in
Yes.
such suffering.
That's beautiful. I love that image. I'm going to hold on to that.
I'll
Yeah.
take a picture of it and send it to you after we get
Oh,
off,
that would be
so
great.
you have of the physical image of it. It's so
Yeah.
sweet. I
Okay,
love her
cool.
drawing.
Well, thank you, Julia. Thank you for facilitating the groups. I just love them so much. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. So it's so my honor. I feel like something very special is continuing to unfold there.
Oh, yeah. And I'm so excited for this nonprofit status and what's to come with that. That is super
Like,
cool.
yes,
Yes.
more.
Awesome. Well,
All
happy
right.
Sunday to you. Okay.
You
We'll be
too.
in touch.
Until next time.
Until next time. Yes. All right, bye.